We are having a look at how to import your palette inside of your scene. Now, in a previous tutorial, you may have learned how to create your own custom palette within your scene, but in this one, we already have one provided within the materials provided for this module. So what we're going to do is go and get the bassel.plt file that we have already inside the files provided. And essentially what a color palette is just this little file of information. So bassel.plt, if I bring it into a notepad right here, just drag it in to see what exactly is going on here. So you have all of the information, you have the names, you have the color code in here, you have the RGB value. So essentially this is what form your palette takes when you import it into Harmony. So it takes all of this information, so you could create one from here if you wanted to, but it makes it obviously much easier to do it from Harmony. So a PLT file is not to be confused with the palette list that you have inside of your scene. So the palette list is the list of different palettes that you have within your scene. So you could have multiple palettes listed in here and use them for different characters or backgrounds or whatever you like. So let's see right away how to import these, how to import this palette into your scene. So right now I've gotten rid of all the information that is within this little palette list right here. So we'll be able to import your palette in. And how we're going to proceed for that is we want to import inside here using the link palette tool. So we have new palette, obviously that's not what we want at the moment. Remove palette, don't forget that the remove palette option will not delete the information that you have here, it will only remove it from your palette list. So you have link palette right here, move up, move down is just to navigate and move up and down the different palettes that you have in here, but we won't worry about that since we only have one. So we're going to select link palette for now just to see a little bit the structure of our scene. Right now at the moment we are under scene, we have advanced rig, because what happens is that when we have a new scene created, Harmony automatically creates a new palette for that scene. So we've deleted that information from here. It still exists as I mentioned before. If we go under element, job, we don't have anything in here. I have my palette listed under environment at the moment, so you guys will have it in here if you've created a new scene from scratch for your project. Now the file that I have provided will not be visible into any of these right here. So what we could do to import it in, if you're working, if you're the only person working at home from your computer, one of the things that you could do is link the palette but external link. So you can access it either from the upper left corner right here, or you can right click over here in your scene palette list location, and you have link and link to external here. Now I try to avoid using this one when I'm working with other people, because what happens is if I link to an external file that is outside of my Harmony structure, if I try to reincorporate the entire thing together or send it over to a co-worker or somebody that works with me on the same project, those files are not always available to those other people. So sometimes it's best to have it inside of your structure, but if you wanted to link it to an external palette, this is where you would do it from. You simply go and browse, get your file. I have mine on my desktop right here. Could go and open that up, set it as scene palette list, and press OK. And here you would have it, the entire palette that we have here. But what I would recommend that we do for this exercise, just to practice on as well, seeing how the entire structure works as we've seen before, is familiarize ourselves with this. So when we create a new scene, and if you have the advanced palette list setting added right here, if you go under Edit, Preferences, we may have touched on this a little bit earlier in the series of tutorials. So Edit, Preferences, Advanced. I have Advanced Palette List here. If I want to have more control on where my palettes go, I will enable this feature and press OK, because what happens if you don't have that setting activated is that your palettes by default will go and create themselves into the palette library right here, which is where our custom default palette for our scene creates itself. So we have it here, and this is at the scene level. So as we mentioned when we were linking a palette, so if I just go back here, I have the scene level. So this is essentially this right here. So this is my scene. This is the entire folder of my scene right here, and the palette stores itself in here by default. I could decide to go and place it at the job or environment level right here. So I have jobs, I have environment, and this is where my palettes would locate themselves. This is essentially more useful when working in a networked harmony. So the files will consolidate themselves more easily if going back from standalone edition all the way to network edition. So usually what I do is I like to store my palette inside of the environment level. So what you can do is go here, Digital Palette Library, and go and store your file here. So you can go and bring it over from your file right here. I'm going to go and get my desktop, get my bassel palette that I have right here, and you should have it inside the files that you downloaded. Drag it over here, and then you will be able to bring it in from the link palette option. So I have it here, job, environment. You should be able to see it right here once it's been added. You select it, select scene palette list, press OK, and here we have our palette. We are ready to get moving to the next step.